okay. Yeah. Have you got your curtains drawn?
Have I got?
Yeah.
Is my picture clear?
It's clear on the laptop, but not on the big screen. It's like there's a light coming onto your face.
Okay, let me try to close the curtains and let me check.
Yeah, that probably might assist us.
Okay.
Just close the curtain. Much, much better, Mr. Sandawana.
Okay, thank you.
Yabona uli Sandawana.
Enkulu.
Yeah. We've got your statement been made into an affidavit, but Advocate Ntsebeza is going to swear you in, and Mr. July will give an indication of what evidence you must expect from you, and then we'll take it from there. Advocate Ntsebeza.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Thami.
Hi, Thami.
Yes. Are you going to take an oath or are you going to affirm?
I think I'm going to take an oath.
Okay. Mr. Tsolekile, do you swear that the evidence you'll be giving today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
Whatever I'm going to be saying today is the truth, the whole truth. I raise my right hand. Help me God.
Thank you very much. You've now been sworn in as a participant in the SJN hearings.
Yeah. Hi, afternoon, Mr. Tsolekile.
Good afternoon, Mr. Salim.
Yes, you on the 5th of May 2021, you submitted a statement, or you made submissions to the SJN. Do you recall that?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
And when you take an oath, you stand by that statement. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And that statement has been converted to an affidavit, and you stand by that.
Yes, I do.
Yes. Then your affidavit is structured in the following manner. You first deal with your period as an under 13 player, touring PE, which is now Gqeberha. You then deal with the Western Province as under 15 PG Bison. And then you have got a heading which deals with you now turning 15. And then you talk about your journey at Western Province, which is now Cobras, 1999 to 2008. Then you talk about Protea's experience, your experience as a Protea player. And under that, you're dealing with two instances, the 2003 and 2004, the tours in India and England, right? And then 2012, 2014, you've got a contract with Cricket South Africa, but you don't play in the World Cup. You don't play for Proteas. Then you deal with the racist and what you refer to as racist and prejudicial attitude of Mr. Graham Smith, right? And lastly, you conclude, you make remarks, concluding remarks.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Yes, you are not confined to this affidavit. You are free to say anything that is correct or that is true in the course of your testimony. Okay. Now the ball is in your court.
First of all, I think I'd like to take this opportunity to the SJN for giving us the current players, the ex-players, for allowing us to share our stories, our experiences in the past. Nothing but the truth, I think, is very important. And for me, the motive why I'm sitting here today, I know a lot of people have spoken about Black Lives Matter. Yes, we all know that all lives matter, but I do really support the Black Lives Matter. But for me, the motive to be sitting here today, my experiences, and probably I'm doing it for the next generation. And basically what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't want my kids to go through the same experiences that I've gone through. And no, any other African Black players, colored players, no Indian, to experience what we've experienced in the past for more than 20 years. And also, special thank also needs to go to Dr. Eugenia Kula, who has initiated this process. And I know it hasn't been easy. It's been tough, and I know in the media she's been getting a lot of stick for doing something right. And also to the players who have spoken before me, the comrades and the people that are going to be speaking after me, I also say to them, I think, well done. And also I know a lot of people also, they would have loved to be here. They didn't have the opportunity to speak. And some of them, obviously, they're scared to speak because maybe they think that they're going to be victimized. But we're also speaking on behalf of them as well. And as I'm going to be speaking now, I'm going to be talking about my experiences starting from under 13. I think just before I start, I think it's very important also to give a little bit of a background for those people who don't know me, who I am. And obviously my name is Thami, and I was born in a small township called Langa Township. And I was actually born in a hostel street called Khubusana until at the age of 5 years. And then I moved to Harlem Street, which was the next street. And I was fortunate enough to be born next to the stadium. And in that stadium, it was a multi-purpose stadium where growing up as a youngster, my favorite sport, just like any other Black African player, I always played soccer, was my favorite sport. And then I was very fortunate enough to play hockey as well. And I played cricket. So growing up, I played all those three sports. And I can confidently say that I was excelling in all of them. And while I was still young, and I was probably getting more trophies, more soccer trophies, more than cricket and hockey. So, yeah, just before I go off the rail, I just want to go straight now to my experiences when I made the Western Province under 13 tour to Gqeberha, formerly known as Port Elizabeth. Based on my performances as a special wicketkeeper and batsman during school practices, I was invited to the Western Province trials. However, during the trials, I was forced to give up wicket-keeping, which I personally thought that at my age, It was always been my specialty and betting. But because I wanted to be part of the team, I felt at that time I was left with no choice but to do as I was told. We flew as a team with coach, Mr. Majid, and all was well during the flight. However, when we landed in Gqeberha, Alpen Como and I, the two Black African players, were told that we were no longer continuing traveling with the team and we will be fetched by someone that we didn't know.
What year was this?
This year was 1993, if I can recall correctly. Yes, 1993.
Okay.
Consequently, we watched our teammates live on a separate bus when we landed in PE. And that was the last time that we saw our teammates. And I remember very well that we were told that our transport will be coming to fetch us. But I was very surprised by the management and the coach to leave two young players, 13-year-old, behind. And then and we watched them leave with the bus, and then we were stranded at the airport for at least 40 minutes. And then eventually a guy that I can't actually recall what his name was, he came to fetch us at the airport. And the guy at that time, I think he was working for a company called DET. And he fetched us, and we went to Tsolekile. It's a township in Gqeberha. So as young as I was, I didn't have any family members there because obviously I'm originally from Cape Town. So that was the last time that we saw our teammates at the airport. Before the tour, I always batted in the top 4. However, when we got to Gqeberha, I was made to bat at number 8, number 9. I remember how disappointed I was because of the change in the batting order. I feel that I was never allowed to impress or to be recognized for the player I was in that tour. The worst experience that we got during our stay was when we had to sleep. We had to sleep in the kitchen. I don't come from a rich family. No, I come from a middle-class family, but I come from a family with values, with principles. And also in my family, there were 11 of us staying in a house. And I can't actually recall sleeping in the kitchen or sleeping in a mattress. But myself and Alpen Como, the other Black African player, we had to share a small mattress that with that duration of that whole week. And then we were also listening to our white teammates. There were also one colored guy and one Indian guy. The Indian guy's name was Fakhmi Jardin, and the colored guy was Warren Weingart. They were also sleeping with the white guys at the hostel. If I can recall very well, they were actually sleeping at Grey High School. During that week, I remember when we had to wash in the morning. We had to wash in a small bucket, and literally we have to wait for like 20-30 minutes for the water to get warm. And then myself and Albert, were to share the same water. But at that time, for us, English, we weren't very compulsive when it comes to English. Didn't come very fluent. So we were just almost talking talking with sign language. As little did we know that it was the start of my journey. And at the end of the tour, I can remember very well flying back with the squad. I think my mom went to the hotel, went to the airport to fetch me. And when I saw my mom, and then I started crying. And obviously, then I told her exactly what has happened. And then I think we wrote a letter to Western Province Cricket. And at that time, the CEO was Arthur Tanner, who later on became my agent, and Mr. Nabil Din. We told them exactly what we've experienced, and they promised us that it will never happen again. And I think they wrote a letter to my mom, and I think I still have that letter. And the letter was from Arthur Tanner. Yeah, and that was my end of my tour, on the 13th tour.
Right. Thami, in that letter, was it explained why you and Alban Como received different treatment and why you had to sleep in the township?
Well, the letter itself, if I can recall very well, didn't say much. All it said was they really do apologize with the treatment that we got in Gqeberha.
Thank you. We can proceed.
Yeah, before you proceed,
You still have a copy of the letter.
Yes, I do still have a copy of the letter. My mom's got it.
Can you please make it available to us? You can send it
I'll
to
try to
Advocate. Yes.
Yes, I'll try to do that. The following year, I went to the under 15 trials, and I think I was very fortunate enough to be given a bursary by Western Province, which I'm grateful for. And that was in 1994. I was 14 years old, and I had cemented my wicket-keeping spot. Not only that, but I was scoring a lot of runs for my school. My peers, my teammates have always known me as a wicket-keeper batsman. To my dismay, when the opportunity to the under 15 trials, I was told again that if I want to go to the trials, I must go as a bowler. This did not sit well with me, especially considering my experiences in the previous years. I was then told that 2 wicket-keeping positions have already been secured by other 2 players. These players were Nizam Ali from Wambek Boys, he's Indian origin, and the other player was Sherwood. His surname was Sherwood. He was from Bishops. You must remember the previous year, Sherwood was my captain under 13. So automatically, because he was from Bishops, I was actually told that if I want to make the under 15 trials, or the Western Province team, I need to go to the trials as a spin bowler. So that didn't sit well with me. This suggested to me at that time, some players were given preference and given positions within the team without trials. Since I had refused to go to the trials as a bowler, I was therefore not afforded the opportunity to make the under 15 team. So when I was 14 years old, I was doing grade 8, then I was standard 6 in pilots. So I never made the Western Province under 14 side. So obviously, Nizam Ali maybe was ahead of me, so I couldn't make the team. And I was actually told that those two guys would take the sports. And you must remember, the under 15, they picked two teams, either the under 15A or the under 15Bs. So that following year, I didn't make any side. The following year, that was 1995. I was 15 years old. I was playing under 19 for my school, which is the first team for Pilots High School. Still, again, I was not invited to go to the under 15 trials, as I was actually told that the two sports that I was actually vying for were taken. I was the best batsman at school, scoring a lot of runs, but kept being overlooked for the under 15 trials. Later that year, I, uninvited, I went to the under 19 trials with the hope that I might be seen, recognized, and allowed to play in the trials. To my luck, one of the coaches that I played against, I remember he was from United, and I remember I can recall very well that few weeks before the trials, I got 97 against them. While I was 15 years old, playing under 19. So he spotted me sitting under the tree, and then he asked me, "What are you doing here?" And said, "I know I came to the 19 trials, but I went to I wasn't actually invited to go to the under 15 trials." So with my luck, and then he called me to play in his team, and then the rest was history. And then I remember playing well in the trials, and at the end of the trials, I was selected to play Western Province under 19 B team. And at that time, my captain was Alfonso Thomas, who later became my captain. And but that to me didn't make any sense, because for someone who is 15 years old and to go to the under 19 trials and make a team there, not because of my color of my skin, because I scored a lot of runs for my school and in the trials. But for me, it didn't make sense that I was actually told that I wasn't good enough to play in the under 15s. And then from 1995 until 1999, each and every year, I was playing Western Province. I remember 95, I made the B side. 96, I made the B side. And then the last 3 years of my under 19 for Western Province, I made the A side. And my last 2 years, I was a captain. I was a captain for the side. During those years, if I could recall very well, is that I can tell you right now, no one has ever played Coke Week, and at that time was called the Kaya Machola Week, but no one hardly talks about it. I played 5 years. I played 5 years in a row playing for Western Province under 19, and I can tell you right now, I know it's not in my submission, but as I'm talking, it's also coming back into my memory. Is that I can tell you right now, no one has ever played Nuffield Week. Then it was called Kaya Machola Week, more than me. Then I can proudly say that. And along the way, while I was playing for my school, I had a choice when I was given an opportunity to choose any of the schools. But because of my friend at that time, who was Pino Mayekiso, who was excelling at cricket, he was also excelling at hockey. So I chose pilots because I knew some of the guys from Langa that were going at pilots, and Albert Como, he chose Weinberg. We chose Weinberg boys. And during my years at pilots, I remember I broke each and every record I broke that was set by the greatest cricketer that I've ever seen in the world, Mr. Jacques Kallis, the GOAT. And in my opinion, he's probably the greatest cricketer that I've ever seen. And I was fortunate enough to play with him for more than a decade at Western Province. And I was actually fortunate enough to play with him at the Proteas team as well. And he was probably one of the best bowlers, greatest batsman, best midfielder. And after completing my matric in Pilots High School, I started post-matric at Apples College. That was 1999. I remember I was doing my post-matric, so I was invited to go to the National Academy. National Academy is every cricketer's dream to go to that academy, because 99% of the time, if you get invited to go to that academy, you are most likely to play for your franchise, for your province. So for me, I had a choice, either to do my post-matric that year and to choose the academy. But obviously my mom wanted me to do my post-matric at Apples College. That was 1999. But as stubborn as I was, I chose, I wanted to do both at the very same time in 1999. So the school started in January. So I remember I was there for the first 3 months of the school. And in April, then I left school. Then I was also getting notes. To try to catch up, but there was no chance for me that I was going to do that, because the academy itself was very demanding. We were busy almost every day. And then I went to the academy, and I must say that was probably the worst experience that I've ever faced during that time of my academy. And below, I'll give you my experiences of what has happened in that academy during that year.
Where was the academy?
Was it in Cape Town?
Sorry about that. The academy was in Joburg. It was known as UJ. Can I carry on?
Yeah. So when you say it was known as UJ,
Yes. I think now it's known as Rao, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it was Rao.
It was Rao. Now it's UJ.
Now, yeah, University of Johannesburg.
Yes. Yeah.
What is now University of Johannesburg used to be Rand Afrikaanse Universiteit.
My mistake.
Hence,
My
Rao.
mistake.
Okay.
During that time, Mr. Chair, obviously from Cape Town, there were two guys that were selected. It was myself and Albert Como. The other Black African players that were also in the academy was myself, Albert, we were both from Cape Town, and we had the late Walter Masimula from Gauteng, We had Dumisa Makalima from East London. We had Lefty Ngeke from East London, was one of the coaches. And we had a guy from Zimbabwe. His name was David Mutendera. During our stay at the academy, we were made to stay in one house. When I say in one house, the black players were staying together. We were told to stay in one house. And there was actually another Indian origin. His name was Golambodi. So basically there were 7 of us in the house. However, we were not allowed to visit other members of the academy. My stay at the academy started to feel like a prison camp. Since we were all under 21 years old, we were not allowed to drive the academy because you had to be over 22 to drive the bus. So I was the youngest player in the academy, myself and Albert, and Tumi Makalima. So most of the time, Walter Musumula will be driving us around wherever we wanted to go. And the coaches of the academy was the late Hilton Ackerman, who was the head coach. This gentleman was very biased, racist.
Who's that? Ackerman.
Mr. Hilton Ackerman. Mr. Chair, I think let me stop there a bit when I say racist. I know sometimes we as Black African players, when someone or your white counterparts, they don't like you, we tend to use the word racist very easily, even if someone doesn't like you. But I'll give you why I'm saying he was the racist. And for me, it's not nice to talk about someone that obviously can't defend himself. But I will give you my experiences, how we lived our life in the academy. We were always discriminated against the black players in not giving the chances to play. As a result, few of the players who made out of the academy to date never came back from that, Mr. Chair, because of the experiences that we experienced at the academy. We as a group, we started to develop a bad attitudes towards the coaches. This created a very hostile environment and traumatizing at times because of a certain extent. We understood what racism was, but we were not trained or matured enough to know how to handle our experiences. As tough as it was, Mr. Chair, what we were going through there, as I mentioned in my submission, that we knew there was something wrong with the treatment that we were getting. But
What difficult?
If you were just to describe Thami to somebody sort of in a conversational tone, what do you remember to have been some of the most traumatic experiences which you experienced there that brought you to the conclusion that some of these things were happening to you because you are not white or you are black?
Mr. Chair, the fact that the head coaches and the management, they make all the black players to stay in one house. That's one of the reasons. The second reason, Mr. Chair, was we had our own kumbi. We weren't allowed to travel with our white teammates in another kumbi. The third reason, Mr. Chair, was in the academy. I'm not exactly sure when was in academy introduced. If I'm not mistaken, it was 1992, 1993. Mr. Chair, the academy, over the years, everyone goes on tour. But in that particular year, Mr. Chair, I was the only black African player that went to Scotland and Ireland. All the other black African players, Mr. Chair, that I've mentioned in my submission, they were left behind. There were no other colored players or Indians or white players that were left behind. I was the only black African player that went on tour. Mr. Chair, in the academy, you get 22 players. In the previous years, what you find out is that everyone goes on tour, Mr. Chair. Everyone goes on tour. But in that particular year, other black players, they didn't go on tour, Mr. Chair. And I was very fortunate enough for me, for my side, I was one of the captains. We had 3 captains, Mr. Chair, in the academy. Because I came with a reputation coming from SJN 19 captain, I was made to be one of the captains in the academy with Justin Ontong, and another guy was Aldo van der Berg, he was the captain. But if you have to ask me, Mr. Chair, did I have the opportunity in that 6 months to captain? I didn't. So, Mr. Chair, so what I did was, as a captain of the side, I had to stand up for the players, like I've always done throughout my whole career. I always stand up, Mr. Chair. This is probably the reason why, Mr. Chair, I'll be probably the first guy who can admit that I was never very well liked in the cricketing circles, nor in the hockey circles, because of the principles that I've always believed in, Mr. Chair. Because I know I've got a strong character, I've always had. So, Mr. Chair, I went to Dr. Ali Bacher and tried to get a reason why the other players were not going to Scotland and Ireland. So I had to play a role to do that, Mr. Chair. Because I wasn't allowed to drive a Kumbi, I asked Walter Mosimula to drop me by the CSA, and at that time, they were called UCB officers. Mr. Ali Bacher said to me he was going to solve the problem. The reason I was told was they didn't have enough funds. They didn't have the budget. They were cutting the cost. Mr. Chair, only to find out when we were at the airport, I was very surprised to see Mr. Simcox and Mr. Jonty Rhodes, who I admire a lot. I think Jonty Rhodes, that whole tour, was a role model. The way he prepared, the way just the way he got on with other things, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Simcox, I think he was sent to distract me. And I remember during our stay in Ireland and Scotland, he told me I got hard hands. Knowing very well that, Mr. Chair, that I was good at what I was doing. And I always knew that I was probably one of the best keepers in the country, Mr. Chair.
What did you say you had? You had hard hands?
That means I had hard hands. I had hard hands in creating terms, Mr. Chair. Basically, what it's trying to tell you is you are not a keeper. Rather do something else. Rather do something else. You are not a keeper. Mr. Chair, I was born to be a keeper. I was born to be a keeper. And even not many people in cricket who tell you who the best keepers they've ever seen. Even Mr. Jennings himself confirmed to me that I'm one of the best keepers the country has ever produced. I didn't say that. He said it. So during that tour, Mr. Chair,
So what did you understand then, Mr. Hilton Ackerman's problem to be? If by all accounts you were a very good wicket keeper.
Mr. Chair, at that time, you must remember I was 19 years old. So what was going through my mind was the same thing was happening when I was 13 years old. So I said to myself, whatever you're telling me about what God has given to me, I'm going to try to prove you wrong. So that's how I understood, Mr. Chair.
When you say Pat Simcox was sent to distract you, like what do you mean by that? Sent by whom?
I don't know. All I can say was I had the whole month with him. He never had anything good to say about me there. If you ask me sent by who, I wouldn't know. But that whole month for me was a worst experience. And I remember when I left the team, I was called a traitor by the other black African players, because now you must understand that I'm the only one who's going. And although I wanted to stay behind to show some solidarity that I want to stay with them, that I'm backing them up, but Mr. Ackerman said to me, if you don't go on tour and you are selected, you will never ever have the opportunity again to play for South Africa. So you must remember at that time, I have sacrificed my schooling career. I was in the academy for the first 3 months. So now for me, it was an opportunity for me to play for my country. So I told myself, I don't want to become a teacher. I don't want to become a doctor. I want to become a professional cricketer. So I've already made sacrifices. So I was left with no choice but to go on tour. And take it. He was the coach. All the players didn't go. Mr. Ngece couldn't take it, and he came back after 2 weeks. He didn't go to Scotland. He came back, and I remember very well. After the tour, Mr. Chair, there was 1 month left, and I phoned my ex-teacher at that time, was my principal, Mr. John Gilmore. I told him exactly what has happened. I'm on tour and during the academy. Then the last month, I didn't want to be in that environment anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. And I left the academy with 1 month left. And Mr. Ackerman said to me, because I was going to leave the group prematurely. So he said, I must write a speech about my experiences. How did I find my time in the academy? What have I learned? What am I going to take going back to my province? What I've learned in the academy? Well, I didn't have much. All I had was a song from an American singer, Tupac. I think the name of the song was, it's time for us as people to start making some changes. Let's change the way we eat. Let's change the way we treat each other. If you know that song, Mr. Chair, it gives me memories of the academy, of my time there at UJ.
What do you think was the reason that the other black players were left behind on that tour?
I wouldn't tell you any reason why, because as I said, for me, sir, is that in the previous years, everyone goes on tours. But in that particular year, Black African players were left behind. So I wouldn't know the reason why. I wouldn't know the reason why they were left behind. That had nothing to do with any of their performances, because as far as I can recall, Walter Masimula was playing for the Gauteng. He was a very good bowler. Dumisa Makalima was a very good batsman. For the fact that Dumi was there at the age of 19, you must remember that the academy itself, the average age is 22, 23, 24. So we were the youngest players there. That tells you something that we were not just there because of the skin of our color. We were there because of they knew we were good enough to be there.
Even if the reason, as you state in your affidavit, was that there was no budget, the problem with that reasoning is why no budget for black players only?
Yeah, as I said, their reason didn't confirm anything to me, because if they said to me there was no budget, and then why a guy like John T. Rhodes, who I've gained a lot from him on that tour, but I wouldn't say the same thing with Mr. Simcox. And why did they go on tour if they didn't have any budget? Doesn't make sense to me. Why would they leave 5 players behind and then they take Mr. Rose and Mr. Simcox on tour? And for me, an institution like CSA, UCP then, to tell you they didn't have any budget, what's a lie? And that, Mr. Chair, sometimes we sacrifice a lot what we go through. Not many people know that. And I can tell you right now, Alpen Como, my teammate, he never recovered from that. A year later, he stopped playing cricket. And I can tell you right now, and 9 or 10 players better than me. Guys like Ben Malambas, Tando Toleni, Freeman Simelela, Moken Fobo, my uncle Kaya, grandfather, all played for Africa, Mr. Zibi, Mapino, and all those players that I've mentioned, they were better than me, Mr. Chair. And but what kept me going was to prove people wrong, that I will try to do everything I can to play for South Africa one day. I had the easiest choices in my life to do so. As I've mentioned when I started, that I was a very good soccer player at the age of 13, 14. Hence, the community itself, they gave me a name, Maradona. And at home, my mom can back it up that I used to have a lot of soccer trophies. And even in hockey, Mr. Chair, I played South African hockey under 18, under 14, under 16. I was the first black South African player to play for South African hockey player. And I broke the school records along the way as well. And I remember very well that, and I can proudly say that while I was still at Pinelands, Pinelands was a co-ed school, but we were the best hockey team in the country, Mr. Chair. When I was there for 5 years, I've never ever lost a hockey game. That is uncalled for, it's never been seen before. And for a co-ed school like that to dominate the boys' schools in Cape Town during my time, I think it's going to take some time to see that again. That's my opinion. But I think if hockey had money, I probably would have taken hockey, but it makes sense for me at the age of 19, 18, 17, that cricket, so it was a common sense for me to choose cricket because obviously cricket, you can put bread on the table, whereas hockey, you couldn't do that. But obviously with hockey, I was enjoying the achievements that I was getting, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Can we talk then your journey with the Western Province? You said it's now called the Cape Cobras.
Yeah, after they carry me, the National Academy, I think I was very fortunate enough to be given a contract by the Western Province, which is now the Cape Cobras. And myself and Abrikomo, we were given a two-year contract. In cricket, they give you 2-3 years, 1-year contract. So every time you have to keep proving yourself. So I was one of the fortunate guys to be given the contract, myself and Albert. I must say, Chair, I had some lovely times at the Western Province, and during that course, my time, I became a captain, and but my challenge there was always the lack of black players, and I think I was actually the first black player to play for Western Province, Mr. Chair, from Cape Town. And while I was there for 6 or 7 years, Albert was there, but he never got an opportunity to play. For 2 years, he never got an opportunity to play. Eventually, he lost his contract. And after he left his contract, he went to study at UWC, and he never played again. But I carried on and I played. And I remember making my debut. I think I was very fortunate making my debut the very same year, Mr. Chair. I think the keeper at that time was Paul Keston. He got injured. So I took my chance. And I think on my debut, I was the man of the match. And then, for the next 9-10 years, there was a happy days there. But the challenge that I've always had was a lack of transformation in that setup, lack of transformation. The reason why I'm saying that is the Chair. For more than 10 years, I was the only black African player at the Western Province. So now, question you have to ask yourself is that the people that are employed to do the job in the townships. So now you tell me that there's only one Thami Tsolekile in Cape Town that can represent Western Province in 10 years. If I can recall, Mr. Chair, in the last 20 years, it's only myself and Sabu Simeto, who is my cousin, who have represented Western Province, originally from Cape Town. There's too many townships in Cape Town. We've got Kailicha, we've got Filipi, we've got Delft, we've got Langa, we've got Inyanga, we've got Kukuletu. How much work is being put in there to find another Thami Tsolekile in those areas? How much work is being put there? CSA themselves, they have said they put a lot of money in the transformation. Because I'm Thami Tsolekile, I'm playing for Western Province, I will always ask those questions. Because during my time, I was also privileged to give the colors to the under 12, under 13, under 15, to the junior levels. When I was giving the caps to the juniors, one thing I was always looking for, to see an upcoming Black African player representing Western Province. I didn't find any. I didn't see anything there. The question needs to be asked to those guys who works for township development, or they become coordinators. We can't always put the blame on CSA or Western Province. What are we doing with the Black African players in our townships? Are we trying to find another players there? Are we doing the work? What is it? The second African player coach that I've signed was Monde Zondeki. Originally, he's from East London. I was a captain then. I signed Monde Zondeki. And
I'm sorry to take you back before you come to that. I just want you to expand on what you say in paragraph 18. Especially the place where you say Mr. Conrad, I suppose is Shukri Conrad, told you that he doesn't believe in black players and transformation. Now, how did you understand him? What was he saying? I can understand what you say about where he was during the apartheid years. But we are now talking post-apartheid, and he takes that attitude. He's not a white guy, but when he said he doesn't believe in black players, was he referring to Africans? What sometimes is called black Africans nowadays.
Mr. Chair, when Shukri Conrad came to become a coach at the Cape Cobras, he knows we never got along for all those years that he was the coach and I was the captain. We never saw eye to eye. Even today, coach, I don't have a good relationship with him. Mr. Conrad, Mr. Chair, he didn't believe in transformation. If he did, it would have concerned him to have one Thami Tsolekile in the last 12, 13 years in that setup. He didn't believe in transformation. And I'll tell you why he didn't believe it. One is 2009, 2008, he told me I wasn't good enough. I was finished. Mr. Conrad had all the powers. He was a coach. I lost my contract that very same year. I lost my contract as a captain. Let me say that again. I lost my contract as a captain. That very same year, I won a trophy, MTN trophy for the province. And I can proudly say that in that final, we had 8 players. We had 8 players of color that I've backed. The 3 white players that played in that final was Entropatic, Kontelanga, and Alan Dawson. The following year, Chair, Mondo Zendeki, under Sukri's watch, he lost his contract. Now, we've got no African players in that setup. So I was given the opportunity, but I did my research about the guy. Then all to find out, you know, Mr. Chair, in the olden days, during the apartheid times, the black players used to play. The black players used to play together, the white players used to play together. Then I've realized through my research that Sukri was one of the guys who was playing for the white teams. So that tells you something about him. That alone, Mr. Chair. But when I lost my contract, Mr. Chair, I went to sit at the office. I was actually very lucky because you don't often get given another job after you lose your contract. But I was employed as a township development, a township coordinator. I was sitting in the office for 7-8 months. And I was actually trying to figure it out, how we can find more Black African players in the Western Cape. Sitting in the office, I was very fortunate enough, my office was facing opposite the stadium. And I remember very well, I think Alvira Peterson was testifying the other day. I think he mentioned something about, he gave me a call. Sitting in the office. He actually did give me a call. And he did ask me, what are my plans? What I want to do. I said, Alvira, I'm 27 years old. And I think the best is yet to come. And he said to me, would you love to come to Joburg? Then I said, yes, I would love to come to Joburg if the opportunity is there. And I took the opportunity to go to Joburg. And me at that time, I was probably one of the highest paid players at the Cape Cobras. So I took a cut in my salary, although I took a cut in my salary because obviously I wasn't playing anymore. I was out of the game for like a year. For me, at that time, money was never an issue. All I saw was, it's another opportunity for me to go play. And I went to Joburg, Mr. Chair, and I played my best cricket there. And I remember very well when I resigned as the township coordinator at Western Province, I wrote a letter to Mr. Odendaal, who at that time was the CEO. I think the first few days, Mr. Odendaal, he did testify in this SJN. And I wrote a letter saying that, thank you for the opportunity that you have gave me. And I think a lot of work needs to be done in this province to find black players coming through the system. And one day, I would love to come and work at Western Province because it's my home. It's my home. I've been there since at the age of 11, 12. I know the doors ins and out. And I've performed. I've had 1 or 2 bad seasons. And during that process, I was also Player of the Year at Cape Cobras. Myself and Ashwell were both joint player of the Year. And during my performance, I was actually rewarded with a call-up to make my debut, 2003-2004, to the South African team in India, the toughest place to tour, Mr. Chair. So I think Western Province itself, what it's done for me, I can only be grateful. But the challenges are there. I can go to the extent that even today, there hasn't been any black assistant coach, no coaches. Why is it so? And maybe someone needs to tell me that myself and Sabu Simetu, who are the other black African players originally from Cape Town who has played for Western Province. So now you're telling me that in the last 25 years, you can only find 2 guys in the system in Cape Town. Maybe another Thami Tsolekile is there in Kailicha, is there in Nyanga, is there in Langa. And I know for a fact that I've been out of the game for 6 years. I know, and I can tell you, not much work is being done there in the townships. Even CSA themselves, they've admitted that not enough has been done in the township.
Do you want to go into your Proteas experience?
Yeah, I can go ahead, Chair. In 2003, 2004 season, I was player of, okay, let me, I think I've already said that, Mr. Chair. Okay, Mr. Chair, in 2003, 2004, as I just mentioned that I was selected to play for South Africa in England, and we played England at home. So as a 23-year-old, Mr. Chair, I went to the toughest place to tour, in my opinion, and still is. I can say, Mr. Chair, if I'm honest enough, that I never performed with the bat the way I wanted to in my expectations. I think I did well with my keeping, Mr. Chair. So all in all, my tour was an average tour. And then I think if you listen to the players that have spoken, most tours, when South African team or the Proteas team that have lost, the black players will always take a stick for the series. And then, Mr. Chair, after the series in India, the same media, the same journalists were calling, obviously they were calling for Mark Boucher's return to come play. So, and again, we played against England in Gqeberha, known as PE then, in 2003. And I didn't do well in that game that I've played in one test. And I was dropped. I never questioned for me being dropped, and probably that was the right decision, Mr. Chair, for me to be dropped, because now, if you look at the game that I've played 3 test matches, and I didn't do well the way I would have liked to. And what I did, Mr. Chair, was, you know, when you get dropped, the only way you can come back is go back to your province and you put the numbers on the board and perform, and then you're going to start doing that, and then you're going to play again. So then I was out of the protesting for quite some time. And but when I moved to the Lions, when I had the second opportunity from 2009 until 2012, I think I was doing very well. Mr. Chair, and then and I was rewarded with a protest contract, and my contract was from 2012 until 2014.
Before you talk about your experience then in the Proteas in 2012 to 2014, in paragraph 22, you mentioned that you were not given any specialist coaching or no extra coaching was assigned to you, but that was done for white players. Can you just expand on that?
Yeah, to explain on that is that my coach then was Mr. Jennings. Mr. Jennings is a wicketkeeper himself. And normally what will happen when a youngster come into the setup, you get coached by a specialist keeper. But for me, I was left hanging there, but it didn't bother me because I knew my abilities. And Mr. Jennings himself will actually tell you that it didn't have to do much for me to coach him. I was never given the preference to give me extra coaching lessons or keeping lessons, because at that time, even Mr. Jennings himself, he wanted Boucher in that England series to play. And Mr. Jennings himself, he got his wish. He got his wish in that series. He got Boucher to play.
Okay. And how would you describe your relationship with Mr. Ray Jennings? Because there were previous testimonies about Mr. Ray Jennings, and one of the testimonies highlighted that Mr. Jennings had painted one of the black players' face. He painted the face of a black player white with white paint. So I just want to understand from you, how was your relationship with him as a coach?
Mr. Jennings is Mr. Jennings. He's a hardcore coach. I remember that incident. I was actually playing for Western Province. Mr. Jennings was the coach at the Easterns. That very same year, when that happened, I was there. And we were playing against the Easterns. And my relationship with Mr. Jennings, it wasn't bad, it wasn't good. Mr. Jennings is one of the straight talks, breaks no friendship. He's the type of guy that he will tell you what he thinks, he will tell his mind, which is, as a player, you want to hear that. And he knew to me that he would have never done that or treat me like that, because I come from a school where I've always stood firm, and not many people will push me around, and many will tell you I've always stood my ground in creating circles. But still, even if that doesn't happen to me, if it happens to someone else, I will make sure that I protect that person, you know. And maybe because of that, Advocate Dumisa, to me, he never pushed me around, but only thing he did was to sabotage me in a way that maybe he thought I wasn't good enough at that time to play for the Proteas team. Maybe he was right. I don't know. And yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time with him. As I said, we went to India and then we went to England. We played against England here in Cape Town, and I was only there for 2 weeks. So we didn't spend enough time with him to judge him who he is. But the one thing I can tell you about him, the man himself is a straight talker. So I prefer that.
Thank you so much. You can then proceed with your, I don't know, Mr. July, did you have a question? Oh, okay, sorry. You can then proceed with your experience in 2012 and until 2014.
Through consistency over the years for South African A-side and the Gauteng Lions team, I put performances that were hard to ignore. Eventually, I was given a national contract by the CSA for the first time. I was the only player in that 2 years who was not given the opportunity to play for the Proteas team. Even players such as Quinton de Kock, who went contracted to CSA at that time, got to play ahead of me in a test team against New Zealand in Quebec. I just want to stop there, Advocate and Mr. Chair. You know, the fact that they give you a contract, they are acknowledging all your performances, the hard work that you're putting it in. Unfortunately enough, that cricket is a stats game. And if you look at 2009 until 2012, go to the Lions, go to the stats, and look at the performance that I've put in there. I was the best keeper batsman. That's why CSA gave me a contract. It was for 3 good years. I was doing so well. At one stage, for 2 years, I was the SAA captain. I remember 2011, I was named SAA captain to go to Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, I was the player of the series there. We played two test matches. Both games I got 100. We came back, we even played against Australia. I got 100. So I was rewarded with a contract. And in that contract, I had the same contract as the Lions contract. And Mr. Arthur Turner at that time was my agent. So I didn't have any contract with the Lions now. So I was contracted to the Proteas team. So I remember annually I was getting, I think 500,000, if I can recall. The same contract that I had with CSA was the same contract that I had at the Lions for 2 years. So now, why would you give me a contract and then you pay me exactly the same contract as the Lions for 2 years? Same. But the only thing now, I could make more money. Well, that if I play match fees for the Lions, then I'll get more money. But there was no chance that I was going to play match fees because I was always in the squad with the Proteas team. I mean, we went to Dubai, we went to England, we went to Australia, so I hardly play any games. And I got nothing against Quinton de Kock. And Quinton de Kock is probably in the world, is my favorite player at the moment. And Quinton de Kock, he was always going to play for South Africa, regardless. When the opportunity represented itself for me to play for South Africa, that opportunity was not given to me. And I will go in details about that later on. During that time, Mr. Chair, we went to England. And it's unfortunate that Mr. Boucher got injured. When I was given a contract, they told me that if anything happens to Boucher, if he gets injured or he loses form, I'm the next one in line. Hence, they gave me a contract. There were only 2 keepers who had a contract. Unfortunately, what happened to Mr. Boucher in England, at that time I was in Durban, playing for SAA, keeping for SAA. So automatically, it was not a rocket science. The opportunity for me to play was there. And I'm no longer 23 years old, 24. I'm now doing well. I'm the best player. I'm one of the best players for SAA. I'm doing well for the Lions. Now it's time for me to play. And I remember Mr. Barnes, when I left Durban, so now I had to rush to England. Mr. Barnes said to me at that time that I think it's your time now. Take it with both hands. And when I got there, Mr. Chair, I've been around the block, Mr. Chair. I could sense that there was no way that I was going to play. If you ask me, I'm experienced, I know, and I could see the preparations, the talks, that I'm not going to play. But regardless of that, I was preparing as if I was going to play. But only to find out, Mr. Chair, the first test match, they picked the team. Now they're picking AB de Villiers as a keeper. Who? AB de Villiers? He was not a keeper at that time for his province. And AB de Villiers, he was playing for the Titans. If you ask me that year, Mr. Chair, if AB was keeping for the Titans, I can tell you, no, he was not a keeper. The keeper at that time was Priya van Wyk. He was a keeper for the Titans. So, Mr. Chair, I never saw it come, to be honest. And AB kept. So basically now, they were trying to recruit AB, who I personally think is probably one of the best batsmen in the world, to force him to keep so that there's no spot for me to represent my country. And they knew very well that if they make AB as a keeper, they actually forced him to keep. And they always knew that now I had to compete with AB for me to play for the Proteas. So, Mr. Chair, I remember very well Mr. Mbalula, Fikile Mbalula, came to England before the first test match or during the test match. And I was very lucky enough to know Mr. Mbalula. And I've seen I've seen him around Joburg, and close friend of mine. I know him personally. So he was there. He was a minister of sport, and then he came to the training room to wish us good luck for the first test match. And then I looked at Mr. Mbalula. Then after his speech, as he went down, I said in my own language, I said, fix, meaning that I wanna talk to him. As he went down, I went down with him, and I could recall that the whole team was looking at me, wondering what I was talking to him. I said, Mr. Mbalula, you do have all the powers to make me play, because for 4 or 5 years, I've been Mark Boucher's understudy. You do have all the powers. And if you look at my stats, I had my stats. I'm supposed to play in this England tour. Mr. Mbalula promised me to come see me at the hotel. He never did. He never showed up. He let me down. He let me down. So now, as the only Black African team, if your own comrade that you trusted to challenge the coach, to challenge the captain, he does have the powers. I had no one really to talk to or to even challenge their decision to play AB in that series. But as may as it be, Mr. Chair, I worked hard. I do my thing. I performed. I didn't want that. Allow that get into my head. And I was there for 2 months. Then I think we became the #1 best team in the world at that time. Maybe they didn't believe in me as a Black player because they knew that series was a big series. If Mark Boucher was there, they were going to play 6 specialist batsmen. Mark Boucher was going to bat #7. So it makes sense that if another keeper gets injured, I was going to bat #7. But what they did was they played seven specialist batsmen. It's something that when we went on tour, our plan was to play 6 specialist batsmen. #7 was going to be a specialist keeper, and then you get the bowlers. They never saw it coming that Mark Boucher was going to get injured. They never saw it coming. And it's unfortunate that he got injured. I feel for him. But the missed opportunity that they didn't give to me was there for me to play, Mr. Chair. I have all the numbers. I was doing well for the Lions. I was doing well for the SA time. I was confident. I've never had so much confidence in my life ever as a cricketer. As I said earlier on, that when I was dropped 2003, 2004, maybe was the right decision. Not maybe. It was the right decision. Maybe I was young. That made me stronger to come back and play for South Africa. I never played. And I'll go in detail after that. And AB himself, 2011, he was asked a quote. He said, I want to become the best batsman in the world. I don't want to be a wicket keeper. I want to become the best batsman in the world. Because you must understand, Mr. Chair, that if AB wanted to keep, he would have kept Mark Boucher out of the team. But he didn't want to keep. He said, I want to become the best batsman in the world, in his own words. But then the question I'm asking myself is that why, when Boucher is injured, now all of a sudden, AB, you want to keep? Why? Is it a coincidence? What is it? If AB wanted to keep, Mr. Chair, he would have kept long time ago. He would have kept in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. But why now? For 7 good years, he didn't want to keep. Because AB made his debut in 2004. And he played as a specialist batsman. Now, when I'm there, all of a sudden, he wants to take the gloves. Now, Mr. Chair, now you tell me what it is. I don't know. You know, Mr. Chair, I had a good friend of mine. In that protest setup. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, can you see this? Can you see what it is? Can you see what it is?
Can you
open it up? One of these jackets that people put.
I'll wear it, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
It's like you are a traffic cop now.
Can you see what is this thing? Mr. Chair, this is a peep.
It's a what?
A peep. It's a peep.
Beep.
A friend of mine. A peep, yes.
Yes.
It's a friend of mine on tour. All the time that I was in the protest team, Mr. Chair, I was wearing a friend of mine. I was wearing this peep. This peep, Mr. Chair, all the black players, African black players, when they're in that setup, they were wearing this peep.
Where did it come from? And what did it symbolize?
Maybe they didn't have trust in us, in our skill, Mr. Chair. And you can search, you can look over the last 15 years. It's only now, the last 2 years, then you see guys like Temba, Parabada, Gidi, Sipamla that are playing. But for the last 15 years that I've been in that setup, black African players were wearing the bibs. And Mr. Chair, people always talk about, Thami, why you only speak now? I think that's a very important question. Why you talk now? Mr. Chair, once Makaya Ntini said, if Tsolekile was white, he would have played. He said that in public, Mr. Chair. And at that time, Mr. Chair, I was in Australia. And I didn't want to make the environment hostile. I was interviewed by the media, by the journalist. Makaya was right, but for me, I was protecting the protest team, because imagine, Mr. Chair, if I would have said, yes, Makai is right. Now you tell me, Mr. Chair, for the next 2 months, I'm going to be with the team now. How are they going to look at me? So what I did, Mr. Chair, was I responded when I was asked, what do you make of Makai's statement? Then I replied, I said, well, Makai knows. Makai has been set up for 10 years. He said what he had to say. But for me, Mr. Keston told me that I won't play on tour. AB will keep. And I understand him. He told me, and regardless what I was going to say to him, it was never going to make any difference, Mr. Chair. And that made a big effect on me and Makai and Tini in terms of my relationship, Mr. Chair. That for 2-3 good years, I never spoke to the guy again. And then I started to speak to him probably 2-3 years ago because he felt like he was trying to support me, and I stabbed him on his back.
I'm just
To talk to what you say from paragraph 31. Because I'm trying to understand what was going on. I know you have covered this, but it seems to me there is a lot that was going on there.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, obviously, I can go through that, starting from paragraph 28.
Yeah.
Or 26, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Or paragraph 25. Because it seems that you didn't have a good relationship with Graham Smith.
That's paragraph 25.
Yes. Towards the
Yeah, I
end
can
of
see
that
that.
paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Do you know why he didn't want you in the team? Because he seems to have made a lot of pronouncements to several people, to a point where it was either you were in the team and then he was out, or if he's in the team, then you are out.
Mr. Chair, talking from experience, I can tell you right now, Mr. Smith, he never wanted me into the team. He never wanted me in that setup. If you look at all the players that have come and testify, generation after generation, they got similar stories to tell, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Graham Smith was a captain, great captain for our country for more than 10 years. He did well. I've also been a captain, Mr. Chair, of all the teams that I've played for. And I know what power a captain can do. So if he wanted me to play for Proteas, he could have influenced the coach as a captain, like I did at the Lions, like I did at the Cape Cobras. I was responsible. Who must play in the playing 11? And I can tell you right now, in my opinion, that guy was given too much power by CSA, by his teammates. And Graham Smith, he doesn't like people that are hard. And hard in terms of, Mr. Chair, I'm not the type of person that you tell me something, I'm gonna say yes, pass, yes, pass. No. I don't do that. I don't come from that school, Mr. Chair. And unfortunately, Mr. Chair, we live in a society where not only in sport, in any working environment, where people can't voice their own opinions. And it's so sad, Mr. Chair. The minute you start answering, the minute you start questioning your boss at work, you are seen as, hey, this one is too clever. Okay, must get rid of him. You know, so now, in most situations, working environments, even if you can see something is wrong, it's happening, just to protect your job, you want to keep quiet. And for me, Mr. Chair, I'm not like that. I'll speak out. And if I did that, I probably would have played more games for South Africa. And I was never raised like that, Mr. Chair. I don't care if you're rich or poor or whatever. I treat everybody the same. When I was a captain at the Lions, I backed the players who were good enough. When I was a captain, I even back white African speaking people. I can name them and they will tell you I backed them. You know, I never saw color, Mr. Chair. Maybe because, Chair, in my family, I do have a white family. Maybe that also has helped me to understand. So I never see a color. And for me, Graham Smith, even if he comes and testify, but he will tell you he was never responsible for that.
Did you ever get to know why he expressed such a very strong view about you, to a point where you say at some stage in public, he said, if Thami Tsolekile, oh no, that was Makaya, but there is somewhere where you, in paragraph 35, where you say, if Tsolekile plays, I will retire. That's very strong. It was a question of, it's either I am in the squad or he's out. Now, have you ever come to understand, because this is your affidavit and you put those things in quotes, but have you ever fathomed, have you ever come to understand what was it that created such animosity from him towards you?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think everybody else can back it up. I think it was in the papers. I remember very well during that time. We were in 2012. Mr. Hudson himself came to me and he said, you are definitely going to be playing against New Zealand. And everybody knew that I was going to play, Mr. Chair. And only the night before the game, Mr. Hudson called me and he said, in his own words, Graham Smith didn't want me in his team to play. And these were the painful news to receive, Mr. Chair. As someone, after Australian tour, I was told, Mr. Chair, that I was going to play. Instead, Mr. Chair, they picked someone that I was his captain in my team to play, Mr. Chair. And that player was Quinton de Kock. But you could understand why they were doing that, because they were trying to recruit him to become the next keeper. But when Quinton made his debut, they played him with a batsman. And in the long run, now AB was at that time struggling with his back. So now they were recruiting Quinton de Kock, who at the Lions the very same year was playing in my team, I was keeping. So the reason why I'm mentioning that, Mr. Chair, is that in that New Zealand series, they made Mr. de Kock to play as a batter. And the next tour, 4 months down the line, Quinton de Kock left a wicket. So you can understand what they were trying to do. You can understand what they were trying to do, Mr. Chair. And at that time, that was 2014, I lost my contract, and now they got Quinton de Kock to keep. And now AB de Villiers didn't want to keep anymore, because now there's another white player. AB only kept when I was only in his circle, when I was there, Mr. Chair. That's my point. He wanted to keep it when I was there. He didn't want to keep when Boucher was a keeper. He wanted to keep it when I was there. So you could see what was happening. And the most disappointing thing was you got guys that are conveners. Linda Zondi, who is a convener, is a black guy. They don't say anything, Mr. Chair. Because you know what? When they start talking, no, you talk too much. They get someone else. That's how they operate, Mr. Chair. If you don't understand that, you'll never understand. So I know what was happening there, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tsolekile.
Can you answer this question? One is that, was there anything personal between you and Mr. Smith?
As far as I'm concerned, there was nothing personal.
Yeah.
But I could recall when he called me during a game time. I think it was in the national radio, when there was a statement, and I'm not sure who made a statement, where he said, if Tsolekile plays, I will resign. So when I heard that, I was playing a game. In Gauteng. So he actually called me, because he was very much aware that I was playing a game. He actually called me during lunchtime, and he said, whatever you're gonna hear, you probably haven't heard. I didn't say it. So then I asked him, what have you heard? He said, no, there's a story about me saying that if Tsolekile plays, I will resign. So after that, Mr. Chair, I didn't have any words to say. So I just acknowledged, okay, no, it's fine. So basically, he was trying to tell me that he didn't say it. But Mr. Chair, if you want to talk about personal, then I can tell you, personal could be Makai have spoken, Ashwa Prince have spoken. As a leader, if discrimination, racist remarks that are happening while you are a leader and you are doing nothing about that, there should be question marks about yourself.
In short, there was nothing personal that would make him not to play you. Then how would explain his conduct? You were supposed to play. A.P. de Villiers is asked to do the wicketing, which he was not good at. He was a specialist batsman. And then again, when the opportunity arises for you to play, when Mr. de Villiers is no longer interested in that, Mr. Quintin de Kock is now introduced. So your view, you actually absent the personal issues. There were no personal issues. So how do you view his conduct then?
Graham Smith, Mr. Chair, he was never a close friend of mine. We were teammates. And there was never any personal issues with him. I've never had any personal issues with him. And I played against him. I was his captain. And I can't actually recall any incident happened between me and him. And that's why it's making it very, very tricky, Mr. Chair, to find out why this guy, what have I done to this guy? And I remember very well when also he was originally from Joburg. He moved in 2000. He moved to Cape Town, and we played together in the same team for many years. And again, I'm coming back to your question. We've never had any personal issues, so hence I'm trying to find ways of why did he purposely, deliberately try to keep me out of the side.
Thami, just to quote what you said earlier, you said that Graham Smith was given too much power by CSA and his teammates. So that's what you had mentioned earlier. What do you mean by that?
You know, Advocate, when you're in the setup, as I said, I've been in that setup for more than 5, 6, 7 years. So I know what was happening there. I'll give you an example. Linda Zondi himself told me that Graham Smith didn't want you to play. So that's one of the reasons. And number two, our coach, Ashwa Prince, said there was an incident, a racist incident in Australia where Graham Smith was a captain. And Ashwa Prince told the leaders of the team, the coach and the captain, and they didn't do anything about that. Thirdly, I remember very well that when Graham Smith was a Proteas captain, I got to captain some of the games for Western Province. And during that time, we were winning trophies and we were a strong team. So I was the vice captain of Ashwa Prince. So in most situations, if Ashwell Prince and Graham Smith went there, I will captain and I will lead a team to the finals, to each and every tournament. But when Graham Smith was available, because CSA made sure that in most cases, the Proteas must be available for the finals. And then I'll plead with Graham that because you haven't been around, you've been on tours with the South African team, let me captain, because if you look, we will play 10 games and I will captain 9 games when Ashwell is not there, but Ashwell is there, and then I'll be Ashwell vice captain, and Graham Smith was never there. But somehow Graham will be available for the final. Then I will plead with him, listen here, you haven't been around, and I know the players that have been playing. So he will refuse to play under my captaincy. Not even once he has played. Every time he wanted to play, Mr. Chair, he wanted to captain. Although it made sense, in my opinion, that when someone hasn't been around for 2-3 months, and then you take a team to a final, and then you ask him as a player, as a teammate, as a friend, that let me do this, let me play. I never, ever captained him. He wanted to captain. That's one of the few examples that I've got, Advocate.
Is it also the answer, you find it in paragraph 38 in response to Advocate Nele's question. The part answer is the one in paragraph 38. Can you see that?
Yes, I see, yeah.
Yeah, you say Mr. Linda Zondi, who was one of the selectors, once also confessed to me during the Australia tour that selectors wanted me to play in 1 or 2 games, but Graham had the last word when it came to who will play in the game. Is that not a demonstration of too much power?
Mr. Chair, you can see what is happening now. The guy's been given too much power. We all know that. If you ask the cricketers, but not many people will tell you the guy's got too much power. The CSA setup got too much power. And that has been allowed by the people from CSA. To understand, guys like Chris Nzanes, that they can see it, but they don't want to do anything, Mr. Chair. Let me come back to my point, whereas one of the person asked me, why is it only now that you guys are talking? Why is it only now? If I look in the paragraph, I can't seem to find it, but we as a black players, on few occasions we've tried to speak up to CSA and let them know what was happening. And I can recall very well that I was a player myself at that time, and we signed a petition saying that why black players are not given enough chance to play. We were carrying drinks, and Mr. Norman Arendse, who was serving on the board at that time, and Harun Loggett, and Peter Seister from Poland, we met at the airport, and some of the black players were scared to sign petitions, but few of us were there. We went and challenged the board about what was happening to the black African players. And the response that we got from the board members was that, no, they're going to call us for the follow-up meeting. That follow-up meeting never happened. And at that time, I was earning a salary. I was under contract from CSA. I took a huge risk, a high risk to do that, you understand? And that's why I'm coming back and saying that why people are talking now in this SJN. I've always spoken. People knows I've always spoken, but it always goes to the deaf ears.
Looking for paragraph 32 and paragraph 41 when you were saying you can't find those paragraphs. I think it was in the context of why are you talking now? You say there, I was afraid to speak out against my exclusion from the playing team as I feared victimization. Should I publicly agree with Makayantini's sentiments? Although it's related to Makayantini's sentiments, but if you were to agree, the issue is that you were going to be victimized. And in paragraph 41, you are saying it has never been an easy environment, and as a black player, one had to win the attention and favor of the coach before even paying attention to your own performances. The worst was that you could not even report your white counterpart when offended, as that would not be taken seriously. Instead, you will be the one who gets victimized. The only thing that kept me going was my objective to take my family out of poverty by succeeding in the game, and I always kept my spirit high.
What on Sunday?
Yeah.
And through that, in this process, I developed an attitude towards my white counterparts. There was always a bitterness in me, which was a form of defense. This had devastating effects on my life, in and out of the team. Still today, I still experience flashbacks of bad memories as a result of having been a victim of biasness, discrimination, and racism. This traumatic exposure and spoiling my interaction with some of my teammates on and off the field. I even had to go to anger management as I was angry and frustrated by the situation that I've experienced.
I want to go to paragraph 35 again. And this time I want to highlight what you say about the differences in the payments that black cricketers were getting in relation to what white cricketers. And I'll read that portion into the record. You say that every tour that I have attended with the Proteas, Graham, and I suppose you're talking about Graham Smith, and friends will get close to 500,000 for the duration of at least 2 to 3 months. I would only get close to 30,000 rand because I was not playing in those tours. When Graham was asked by the media about this pay discrimination, he claimed that he wasn't involved in how much money was distributed to players. In my view, that denial was plainly false. Graham was more powerful than coaches, CSA administrators, selectors, and CSA president, as he always had his way. They, the coaches, the administrators, CSA administrators, selectors, convener, and the CSA president all knew that black Protea players were paid far less. Now, I've read that into the record because I want you to make as much comment
on that as you would, because it's a recurring theme with most of the players who have testified thus far, including people who are not players, the scene setters as we call them. But I mean, the more I read about them, the more I see the pay difference between white cricketers and black cricketers to have been almost tenfold. Black cricketers were earning almost 10 times less than their white counterparts. What's your attitude about this, and
Mr. Chair,
what would you like us to do had we had power to do anything about this particular?
Mr. Chair, coming back to paragraph 35, just to summarize that, every tour you will have 15 players to go on tour, and those players, will be selected on merit. And in most cases, 100% of the time, I'll be wearing my friend here, the PIP. And the match fees, if you play a test match, you get 50,000 rand. And then if you win a test match, at that time, you get 100,000 rand. So, Mr. Chair, me not being given the opportunity, I missed out on that. In most cases, all the time, because I was wearing the bib, I didn't get to play. The players that weren't playing will get to share the match fee, the 4 of you that weren't playing, the reserves. Mr. Chair, I'm under oath here, and I did say before I come here that I'll speak the truth, nothing but the truth. And straight talks breaks no friendship. Every tour that I've toured, I've never made more than 40,000 rand on tour. Never. Mr. Chair, you can go to CSA. They've got that on records. You can go to SARS. But if you have to ask 90% of my teammates how much they were earning on the same tour that I was there, same tour that I'm putting all the efforts with the team. I'm there 2 months with the team. But when it comes to money, it's a different story, Chair. When it comes to money, it's a different story. And Alvaro was a close friend of mine, and he often showed me how much he got on tour. The same tour that I was with. And you can imagine I make 30 grand on tour. And then other players, they get 350,000 rand, 400,000, 500,000. Now, you tell me, Mr. Chair, how am I supposed to think? What is happening? The system, and they know very well that in most occasions, the black players will be carrying drinks.
Yeah.
Thami, what are your comments on Aaron Pangiso's testimony? When he was here last week, he said when black African players or cricketers are being selected to represent the Proteas, they would be selected to sit on the bench. And then he stated that a black African player gets picked, sits on the bench, and before he knows it, someone else takes his place. What are your comments on that?
It's very true. It's very true. And advocate for me, sir, I've said it earlier that same thing happened to me. Same thing happened to me when they brought Quinton de Kock as a batsman. But they knew very well that down the line, 2-3 months down the line, he's going to become the next keeper for the Proteas. But they were disguising it very, very well. But the fact that, for me, sir, every time I went on tour, the only way I could show my frustrations that I wasn't happy with, I will ask Dr. Mosiji. Dr. Mosiji is currently the Kaizer Chiefs doctor. I'll go to him and said, Doc, we've got a few more days to go home. We've got 4 more days. I will wait until the last game is played, when the team gets selected. Advocate for me, sir. Every time I was on tour with the national team, I've never, ever traveled back with the South African team. Never, ever. In Dubai, I came back alone. I asked Doc, I don't want to travel with the team because that's enough message to see what was happening. But no one will say anything. In England, exactly the same thing. I'll wait until the team is picked. When there's few more days, I'll fly back alone. In Australia, I did the same thing. Everywhere we go, I always come back alone. So I was trying to pass a message to them that I wasn't happy in that environment. Something needs to be done. And for me, sir, I'm under oath here. I can tell you right now, if you look at all the keepers in the country, I'll get to the stats from Mr. Simpson. There's no better keeper batsman that was better than me for 5 years. 5 years. Look at all those 5 years and look who was a better keeper batsman. But in those 5 years, I never played. Someone else played. I'm not looking to play for the South African team because of my color, of my skin. No, I don't want to do that. I want to play on merit. But and I was never given the opportunity to do so. Hence, I'm saying that there's more into it. There's more into it. And people can see, people don't want to talk. People, they're happy there to get their salaries because they know once they start talking, it's bye-bye. Well, me, I'm a different character. I was prepared to lose my contract. I've always spoken. And even all the players that have testified here, more than 40 players, you ask them, they will tell you what character that I was during the 18 years that I've played for MISA. And Mr.
Tsolekile, going to the next issue, I think it would be amiss of us if we don't ask you this question. The circumstances under which you stopped playing cricket, it was, of course, of the allegations that were made. You are amongst those people. Is there any reason why is it not in your affidavit?
Yeah, as you said, I've submitted on the 25th of May. 5th of May. Okay. So now we're talking about the match fixing, obviously. You see, it's a, if I've been listening to Mr. Chair that you wouldn't have enough time for me to talk about the match fixing if we have to go details after details. You will need 3 days, 3 days, full 3 days. I've got a whole file of match fixing, and I've got another file next to me there. So I've made a conscious decision not to submit the match fixing scandal issue because I have decided that I will deal with that matter differently and not in this forum. And one can say it's a missed opportunity. Well, but one thing I can tell you, as people have spoken, I know the processes that were followed there. And I know the remarks that were made against me, that I was a match fixer. I took money, blah, 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 stuff like that. And it's been 6 years being unemployed. It hasn't been easy, it's been tough. And hence I said, I have made a conscious decision not to talk about it because I don't want to go back to that. And Mr. Becker himself knows, and Louis Cole knows that there's a lot more other players that were involved. And the process itself, black players were targeted and they were treated unfairly. And if you want my story, I have spoken to Robert Marawa. I can send you. I've had some threats. When I spoke to Robert Marawa, I've had hawks. I've got it on my phone in the emails. I can send it to that. So, but nevertheless, I did speak about match fixing. So, if you wanted me to speak about match fixing, you need 3 full days to talk about it, and I can talk. But as I said, I know at the end of the day, it's up to me. I don't want to talk about it, and the decision that I've taken. Yeah.
No, we respect that. And in any event, this forum was not set up to review the match fixing. All what we were listening to the other players was just the process that made them unhappy, which according to them is injustices that were meted against them. So we are in no way interested in dealing with the details of the match fixing. That's it from my side.
All right. Thank you. Look, it's your call, but even if it is something that you would send for us to framework anything that has already been said by others, or even for us to have it as a context, your views. We will respect the fact that you have not wanted to speak about that aspect at this forum. But if you could send us anything from Marawa, whether it is a podcast of whatever interviews you have had with them, they will assist us, because this project is seeking to investigate as thoroughly as possible, those things that can be attributed to unfair racial and gender discrimination, and the extent to which those aspects have impacted upon cricketing careers of especially black and or female cricketers. So we would welcome that if you sent us something, or if you permitted us to seek from Marawa podcasts of whatever interviews you have had with him. But personally, I would prefer that you are the one who approaches him and you approve what it is that is a podcast that you think might assist us. Because you never know how what you have said in that program might assist us in understanding the context of the testimonies of others who have spoken about the subject. So it's your homework, and you will not be held over. I will not hold you to it. I will simply say it's an option that I can see might assist the Office of the Transformation Ombudsman in the determination of issues for a report and for whatever recommendations we need to make about testimonies before us. As Mr. July has said, it is not something specifically for our attention here, only to the extent that it might be contextualized, within the terms of reference. What I would like to find out from you as we close is whether you have got any questions or whether you have got any suggestions that you would like to make to us as to what you would hope the outcome of this entire project should be or could be. I don't know whether...
No, I'm saying, yeah, I did hear you. Yes, I did hear you.
Unmute yourself. I think you have muted yourself. If you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Okay, the man from the
Thami. Yes. From your side. You might. Is it fine now? The icon is at the bottom of your screen on your left.
When you remember that I was asking whether you yourself would like, if we said to you, what do you think should be done by way of changes in order to get rid of this racial and gender discrimination in cricket? What would you advise us?
I think it's very important that people need to understand that why we're doing this thing. We're not doing this thing because we want justice. Yes, we want justice, but we are here today sharing our stories because we don't want the next generation to go through what we've gone through. And I'm hoping that CSA and SJN and obviously the past players and the present players that have spoken, they take them seriously of their stories. I know I have been listening to the media. They're saying that because we are speaking, we are Peter. But I can just hope for the best. Hopefully, CSA and even soccer will be a strong institution after this SJN.
Oh, thank you very much. I could not have put it better myself. Well, thanks again, Thami, for making the time available to yourself and to ourselves, and letting us have something to think about as we ponder over your submissions today and your testimony, as well as your helpful suggestions. That at the end of the day, this must be a sporting cricket that should be suitable for all of our children as we go into the future. That is what it should be. We will adjourn for the day. Yeah. Okay.